Mr. Olu, teaching SSS2 and SSS3 mathematics. He was a man of average height who carried himself as though he were much taller. He wore the same style of shoes every day, black leather, always polished, and he walked the corridors of Brilliant Kids Academy with his cane tucked under his arm like a general's baton. He had thin eyes. He smiled rarely, and when he did, it was not a good smile. The classroom on the second floor, room 7, was his kingdom. Students dreaded the sound of Mr. Olu's footsteps in the corridor. You could tell the difference between his walk and any other teacher's. It was deliberate, unhurried, like a man who knew that whatever he was walking toward had nowhere to escape to. When students heard it, conversation stopped. Laughter died. Backs straightened. Exercise books were opened to whatever page and held like shields. He would enter without greeting anyone. He would go to the chalkboard, write a problem in silence, then turn to face the class. His eyes would move slowly across the rows of faces until they settled on one. Then he would say, "You, come out." The student who stood would fearfully approach the board, chalk in hand, stomach in throat. Mr. Olu would step back, arms folded, and watch. And if the student hesitated, if the chalk wavered, if a calculation was wrong, if the handwriting was not neat, he would sigh, a long sigh, and yell, "Are you brainless? Is that what your mother produced? Something that cannot solve a simple quadratic? Even a goat, I tell you, even a goat would have more sense." The class would laugh nervously, because not laughing was sometimes more dangerous. The students at the board would fold inward, small and humiliated, while the cane came down across their palms or thighs, depending on Mr. Olu's mood. He had a particular philosophy about grades. He announced it proudly at the start of every term as though it were something to celebrate. Nobody in this class will score above 15 out of 20. I have been teaching mathematics for 17 years, and not one student has ever surpassed my standard. The highest score in this class was 13, and it was me who set the paper and me who marked it. If you think you can break that record, you are welcome to try. Mr. Olu would flog students on their backs just because they came 5 minutes late to assembly. He would take students to the school's farm during break time and tell them to weed just because he felt like it. And any student who dares to doze off during his class was asked to do frog jumps till the end of his double period, which was usually 4 hours long. The students complained. Of course they did. They went to the vice principal, to the principal herself, a woman named Mrs. Fagbemi, who wore heavy gold jewelry and kept a small Bible on her desk, and they told her what was happening, what he said to them, how he scored them, the deliberate failing, the flogging, and all the maltreatment. Mrs. Fagbemi would listen. She would nod slowly. She would say, "Mr. Olu is one of our most experienced staff members. His methods may be strict, but results come from discipline." Then she would send the students back to class. Mr. Olu knew she would. He had been teaching there for years, and in that time, he had learned exactly how to make himself useful to the school in ways that mattered. Invigilating exams, handling timetable clashes, representing the school to zonal board meetings, he made himself indispensable. Plus, he would make up lies to justify his actions whenever Mrs. Fagbemi called and questioned him, so the students endured. Ashley Okonkwo transferred to Brilliant Kids Academy in the 3rd week of the first term of SSS2. She arrived on a Tuesday, quiet, neat, wearing a pair of thin framed glasses that made her look like she was always looking at something, even when she wasn't looking at anything in particular. She had moved from Port Harcourt with her family after her father's engineering consultancy transferred him to their new Lagos office, so she had to change schools. Ashley did not make a grand entrance. She took an empty seat near the window, set her bag down, took out her textbook, and began to read the chapter the teacher had written on the board. The girl beside her, Fatima, who had a gap in her front teeth and laughed at everything, leaned over and whispered, "You just dey read since you come. Relax now." Ashley smiled and said, "I don't like falling behind." Within 2 weeks, the class knew 2 things about Ashley. She was quiet and she was intelligent. Not in an obvious or boastful way. She never raised her hand dramatically or corrected teachers in public, but her exercise books were immaculate. Her test scores were perfect. During a chemistry practical, she caught an error in the experimental procedure that the teacher himself had not noticed. The other students admired her. Some of the girls were slightly jealous. A few of the boys pretended not to care. But there was a quiet consensus. The new girl was different. Mr. Olu noticed too and started picking on her. If Ashley was as late as just even a minute to the assembly, Mr. Olu will flog the hell out of her and punish her, telling her to sweep the school compound during break time or sometimes remain in a squat position from the beginning of his double period to the end. When she walks past him and greets, he would respond with, "Hey, blind bat, how are you?" And Ashley would fume but keep quiet. One day, Mr. Olu returned mid-term test papers and called out the scores one by one, holding each paper up. When he got to Ashley's paper, he paused. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he called her name, Ashley Okonkwo. She stood. 9 out of 20. Ashley stood very still with shock. She had taken that test. She had answered every question. She had checked her work twice. She knew what her score was, and it was not 9. "But sir, my friend, will you sit down?" She sat, but her jaw was tight. She was confused, angry, and doing calculations in her head to remember if she actually answered some questions wrongly. After class, she went to the staff room and politely asked to see her paper. Mr. Olu gave it to her with the expression of a man handing over something he knows is meaningless. She looked at it. 3 questions had been marked wrong with red ink. She turned the paper over and checked the workings. The workings were correct. The answers were correct. She called his attention. "Sir, I looked at the paper. Questions 4, 7, and 10. My answers are right. I can show you the working." He did not look up from his desk. "I marked it already. Move on." "Sir, I said move on." Now he looked up, and there was something cold in his expression. "Don't come here challenging me. You are a student. I am the teacher. The mark I give is the mark you have." Ashley looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Sir, this thing you are doing is not fair. I didn't complain when you insulted me, and I didn't complain when you flogged me for being just a minute late to the assembly. But failing me on purpose, that one I won't take." The staff room went briefly, subtly quiet. The teacher grading papers at the next desk looked up for just a moment. Mr. Olu stood up angrily and yelled, "Get out of my staff room before I give you something to really complain about." Ashley left the staff room in anger. When she got home, she called her brother. Ashley's brother Kelechi answered on the second ring. His sister described everything in the careful, measured way she described most things. The false scores, the insult, the blind bat comments directed at her glasses, the flogging. She was almost crying. Ashley cared so much about her grades. She studies for hours and has always held the position of best student in her previous school. So being a transfer student in SSS2 and meeting a teacher like Mr. Olu who wanted to ruin her academic records was a no-no for her. Her brother told her he would come visit by weekend just to check in. She should not worry. Kelechi was a calm man. He was patient. He was strategic. He had 2 friends who were the same. Amaka, who was built like a door and had a deep baritone voice, and Tunde, who was lean and fast and who had grown up on streets and had street OT. Kelechi visited home that Saturday, under the pretext of missing the family and coming to check on his parents and little sister. The following days, he dropped off Ashley at school and picked her up from school. He asked her who the teacher was and made mental note when Ashley pointed at Mr. Olu. He found out which road Mr. Olu took home after school. He found out which days the teacher stayed late. He found out the man's patterns. He called Emeka and Tunde. "I need 2 weeks from you," he said. They asked no questions. They had known Kelechi long enough. It started on a Wednesday. Mr. Olu was walking to the bus stop, his leather bag in one hand, his mind already on his evening routine.
He did not see the three men until they were already beside him. They turned him smoothly down a side street without drama or violence for those first few seconds. Ashley followed them. She had begged her brother to allow her witness Mr. Olu's punishment. Then Emeka grabbed his wrists. Tunde grabbed his legs. They lifted him up from the ground and positioned him in a way his buttocks was facing up, ready to be flogged. Kelechi raised the cane and started the lashing. Mr. Olu screamed. The sound was swallowed by the noise of the neighborhood, generators, traffic, the distant bark of a dog. "You dey flog small pikin, shebi?" Kelechi said as the cane fell again. "Now you go understand wetin the pikin dey feel." Mr. Olu cried out, begging, screaming Ashley's name and begging her to tell them to stop. "Oga, abeg, I will not do it again, please." When it was over, they stood him up, straightened his shirt, and Kelechi leaned close to his ear. "Now, day one. Listen and listen attentively. You go apologize to all the students where you wrong, you go score Ashley paper correctly, and if you try report to anybody, you go jam us for straight. Now, go." Mr. Olu left. He walked fast, then started running, so fast that one shoe removed and he didn't wait to wear it. He just kept running.
The next day, Ashley went to school. She sat in class. It was mathematics period. She watched Mr. Olu walk into the class looking like he was in pain, because he was. She giggled, remembering what she had witnessed the day before. He wrote on the chalkboard. He taught, but this time he did not call any student to the board and publicly humiliate them. The cane stayed under his arm. After school that day, Emeka and Tunde were waiting near the car wash on the next street. They pulled Mr. Olu in, holding their canes. "Remove your shoe, you go wash car today," Tunde said. Mr. Olu stared at them with fear in his eyes. "I said remove your shoe," Tunde yelled authoritatively. "The car no go wash itself now." He washed 3 cars. A mechanic nearby watched it wide-eyed, then looked away. The car wash attendant, who had been quietly informed that something unusual would be happening and had been compensated for his patience, handed Mr. Olu the sponge and bucket. They were pouring water on him as he washed the cars, flogging him lightly, telling him, "If you no wash this car well, you go chop another round of flogging today." The next day, it was frog jumps. 15 meters down the street beside the school, Kelechi stood, arms crossed, while Mr. Olu hopped in his pressed trousers, his leather shoes thwacking the pavement, his face a study in contained agony. 3 secondary school boys on motorcycles slowed down to stare. One of them began to laugh. He was hushed by Emeka. The humiliations were public enough to sting, but private enough to deny. Mr. Olu could not go to the police and say, "They made me wash cars and do frog jumps." He could not explain it in the staff room without people asking questions he did not want to answer. The following week, they made him buy lunch for Ashley and Fatima from the suya spot near the school. He stood at the counter and ordered 2 portions of suya, 2 bottles of Fanta, and brought them to the girls where they sat outside on the low concrete wall. Ashley received her lunch without looking at him. Fatima looked between them, understanding dawning on her face, and said nothing, only took a sip of her Fanta. "Thank you, sir," Ashley said sarcastically, giggling. He said nothing. His hands were shaking slightly. At close of school, he stayed late at school long after the other teachers had left. He sat at his desk in the empty staff room, staring at the stacks of unmarked exercise books. He had lost almost 3 kilograms in 2 weeks. He was sleeping badly. Every sound outside his window in the night made him sit upright. He had begun taking a different route home each day, varying his timing, ducking into shops he did not need anything from. It did not help. They always found him, and they always either flogged him like he flogged students or gave him a punishment. He had not touched his cane since the 2nd week. He had not insulted a single student. He had not announced anyone's score publicly. He had not even raised his voice. Mr. Olu became terrified. He couldn't even look Ashley in the eye. He'd walk with his head low. The students noticed. They spoke about it in low, baffled tones. Something had happened to Mr. Olu. Something had changed. Nobody knew what, and nobody asked too loudly.
It was a Monday morning, the 3rd week since Ashley's brother started dealing with Mr. Olu. The entire school was assembled in the courtyard in the way of Nigerian secondary school mornings. Mr. Olu stood in the teacher's line off to one side. He had not slept properly the night before. His shirt was rumpled, his face was drawn, hollowed at the cheeks, and he could not stop looking at the school gate. He was looking for them. He did not see them, but he saw Ashley.
She was standing in the SSS2 line beside Fatima, wearing her glasses, her uniform neat, her hair plaited back. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the vice principal. Something broke inside him. He was not a man given to dramatic gestures. His instinct, his years of professional pride screamed at him to stand still, to maintain composure, to survive this somehow with his dignity intact. But he was tired. He was so profoundly, bone-wearily tired of being afraid. Tired of the frog jumps and the car washing and the lunches and the flogging. Tired of hearing footsteps behind him and breaking into a cold sweat. Tired of lying to his colleagues about why he was staying late. He walked out of the teacher's line. The vice principal stopped mid-sentence. Mr. Olu walked across the courtyard, past the rows of students, all of whom turned to watch him with the collective confusion of people witnessing something that does not fit any category they know. He stopped in front of Ashley's line, and then in front of the entire school, 500 students, 30 teachers, 3 administrative staff, and 1 deeply confused vice principal. He went down on both knees. The courtyard went so silent you could hear the flag rope clinking against the pole. "Ashley," he said. His voice cracked on the second syllable. "I am sorry. I have been wicked to you. I have been wicked to all of you." He looked up at her face and then around at the rows of students. "I scored you wrongly. I insulted you. I made this class a place of fear when it should have been a place of learning. I am sorry. I am begging." He was sweating, trembling slightly, his polished black shoes pressed into the courtyard dust. Ashley looked down at him. Her face did not change. It remained the way it had been since the beginning, composed, unreadable, the eyes behind the glasses giving nothing away. "Please forgive me," he said. "I will change, I swear." She tilted her head and said, "I don't know what you are talking about, sir," she said, pleasantly. "Are you feeling well?" The courtyard erupted, in shock mixed with laughter. Teachers were whispering urgently to each other. The vice principal was already moving across the courtyard toward Mr. Olu. Mrs. Fagbemi, who had come out of her office at the sound, stood in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. He submitted his resignation letter a day later. Mrs. Fagbemi asked him to reconsider. He pushed it forward instead. He walked out of Brilliant Kids Academy at noon on that day with his leather bag and his polished shoes and without his cane, which he had left in the bottom drawer of his staff room desk. He did not look back at the building. He walked to the bus stop and stood in line with everyone else. The punishment stopped the day he resigned. Kelechi sent Ashley a voice note. "Dawn, make sure you tell me if anything else happens." She replied with a single word. "Noted."